Ophelia Frostborn ran barefoot through sleet and ash, wearing a dead girl's servant dress and a kitchen apron stiff with old grease. The hem kept tangling around her knees. Every third step she stumbled because iron had taught her body to move in short, careful distances, chain-length obedience. Her wrists were stripped raw where she had worked one cuff loose by rubbing it for weeks against the edge of a cracked stone trough. Blood had dried in dark, tight bracelets around both hands. The moon was a thin, hooked blade above Duskwalker Keep, and she could still hear them shouting behind her. "Find her! Check the lower kennels! Master Kane will skin the one who let her slip!" A horn blew once from the eastern tower, then twice. Wolf Hunter's call. Ophelia flattened herself beneath a fallen pine where snow and soot had made a shallow drift and pressed a fist over her mouth to stop her teeth from chattering. She could taste metal in the back of her throat. Fear, blood, winter. Everything tasted of metal now. Under her collarbone, the old mate brand burned. It had never stopped burning. Not truly. Some days it was only a coal. Tonight, it was a knife. Kane had put it there in the crypt chapel 2 years ago while she screamed and 4 of his men held her down. She still remembered the priests chanting, the way Kane's shadow crossed her face, the copper tang of her own panic. "You'll never run from me again," he had said, voice almost gentle. "You are mine by right now, mine by blood, mine by moon." He called it a mating bond in public. In private, he called it a leash. When he was pleased with her silence, he let her sleep in a locked room with a bed and a bolt. When he was not, he had her chained in the old salt stores below the keep, where the air stung open skin and rats learned human fear quickly. He liked to make examples. A servant caught passing her bread had lost 2 fingers. A stable boy who gave her a blanket had been flogged in the courtyard until she fainted at the sound. He'd knelt then, lifting her chin while she swam in and out of darkness, and whispered, "You see what kindness costs? Remember, your choices draw blood from everyone else." So she learned to ask for nothing. Now she lay in filthy snow while torches bobbed in the trees above and men cursed her name. "Not your name," she corrected herself numbly. Kane had forbidden Ophelia months ago, after she refused to answer his hand-fasting vows before his council. "You answer to Moonbitch until you learn gratitude," he told her, smiling in front of the entire hall while laughter cracked around her. "A stray should be grateful to have a collar." Something moved beyond the pine, boots thudding over roots, a hound snuffling. Ophelia stopped breathing. The brand flashed hot enough to make her vision spark white. She bit the inside of her cheek hard to keep from gasping. The hound halted. A handler hissed, "Track, Gristle, track!" The animal whined, circling, then surged in the wrong direction toward the river cut. Ophelia realized dimly that the blood soaking her wrists had dripped onto her apron, and she had wrapped the apron around a kitchen bone and thrown it downslope before diving into the drift. Luck. Nothing but luck. The boots receded. The horn did not sound again. For a long time she shook in silence, counting heartbeats and refusing to think about Dawn. Refusing to think about what Kane would do when he found the empty cuff. When she finally crawled free, her fingers were too stiff to feel. She moved downslope toward the old charcoal road because servants whispered that it crossed into Frostborn territory beyond the burned valley. Whispered, too, that no one crossed the burned valley and came back unless Darius Frostborn allowed it. Alpha King, Butcher, Ghost. Or maybe only the last king left alive. She did not care which rumor was true. Better a wolf she had never met than the man who already owned her skin. The thing that forced her from hiding into full flight happened just before dawn, when the storm shifted and carried voices clean as bells between the trees. She was crouched under an overhang of basalt, trying to pry ice from her hair, when 3 riders stopped not 20 paces away. Duskwalker cloaks, silver wolf pins. One wore priest white beneath his fur mantle. Ophelia pressed flat against the rock and listened. Cain's voice came first, warm, amused, the tone he used before punishments. Search farther west. She can't clear the marsh with those cuffs still on. A rider said, If she dies in the cold, my lord, we can still perform the claiming with blood and bone. Cain laughed. No. I want her breathing when I drag her home. There will be witnesses. The priest cleared his throat. The eclipse approaches. The bloodline rite requires conscious assent to avoid backlash. You cannot force the frostborn heir before the old moon altar and expect the throne sigils to answer. Silence, then the soft click of Cain dismounting. When he spoke again, the warmth was gone. You mistake me, priest. I do not need her willing. I need her alive long enough to speak. The right words can be encouraged. Leather creaked. Someone made a strangled sound. Ophelia realized with numb horror that Cain had probably put his hand around the priest's throat. The pack still doubts, Cain went on. They whisper that Darius Frostborn breathes. They whisper the moon throne died with his bloodline. When I present her, my branded mate, true-born Frostborn female, every oathbreaker from here to the western mines will bend knee. Then I will march into the valley, cut out this phantom king's heart and nail it above my gate. Do you understand? A hoarse gasp. Yes, my lord. Cain released him. She could hear cloth rustle as the priest sagged back into his saddle. Then Cain said, lightly, And when we find her, bring her to the inner yard. I want chains at her ankles. No hood. Let everyone see what happens to girls who run. The riders turned. Hooves struck sparks on stone and faded east. Ophelia stayed where she was until she realized she had sunk her own nails into her palms hard enough to draw blood. She had been waiting. For what? She did not know. For help? For mercy? For the brand to fade? Listening to Cain speak of her like a title deed burned the last hope out of her. There would be no trial, no negotiation, no surviving him quietly. If he caught her, he would use her body to crown himself and execute anyone who refused to cheer. If she stayed hidden, he would still march on the valley and blame her for every corpse. Her breath came short, fast. She pressed her forehead to the freezing stone and whispered to the mother she barely remembered, to the ancestors she had been forbidden to name, to any old god listening in the dark. I'm running, she said. I'm running now. Keep me on my feet. She broke the remaining cuff chain on a jut of rock, skinning her knuckles to the bone. She tore the iron mate tag from her neck and buried it under ice. She stole back onto the road and did not stop when wolves howled behind her, close enough to raise the hair at her nape. Morning came gray and hard. Snow turned to icy rain. Ophelia crossed the marsh by stepping on frozen reed clumps that cracked under her weight. Twice she fell thigh-deep into black water and clawed out, choking. By noon she had no feeling below her calves. By dusk she was hallucinating warm bread and hearth smoke, and her little brother's laugh. Dead 3 winters, killed when Duskwalker raiders took Frostborn lands. She kept moving. At the old border stones, most toppled, the Frostborn wolf carved into them scorched away, she heard riders again. This time, they did not bother stealth. Brand's pulling her north, someone shouted. Another voice, eager and cruel. Moonrise is tomorrow. He can call her home from 10 leagues. Let her run till she drops. Laughter. Ophelia ran harder. The burned valley opened before her near midnight, a wide scar of black earth and pale skeleton trees, where old fire had eaten everything and left the land smelling faintly of wet charcoal even years later. Mist pooled in the hollows. In the distance, new structures rose from ruin. Timber frames, patched walls, watchfires in iron braziers. Frostborn colors, silver and deep blue, hung torn but defiant over rebuilt palisades. She had made it. The thought came with no triumph, only disbelief so sharp it hurt. Then her knees buckled. She caught herself on both hands and nearly screamed as grit embedded in her split palms. The brand flared again. Harder, deeper, as if a hook had lodged beneath her breastbone, and someone far away had started to reel. Moonrise tomorrow. Kane's hunters had been right. The brand could drag. She crawled the last yards to a ridge and saw movement below. Wolves on patrol, lean and scarred. Men and women carrying beams. Children asleep in bundled nests near the inner fires. Rebuilding, not hiding. A whistle cut the air. She froze. Two scouts materialized from the mist, blades drawn. One was a broad-shouldered woman with half an ear missing. The other a boy hardly older than 16 with frost in his lashes. "Hands where I can see them," the woman snapped. Her gaze raked Ophelia's rags. The blood, the iron cuff still clamped to one wrist. "Name." Ophelia tried to answer. What came out was a rasp. "Please, I need your alpha." The boy sniffed once, then stiffened. "Duskwalkers stink." The woman took one step closer, knife tip at Ophelia's throat. "Why are you here?" "Because Kane is coming." Her voice cracked. "With priests, with oathbreakers. He means to take me in front of your people and claim the moon throne. He'll kill your king before dawn if he can." The scouts exchanged a look, skeptical, alarmed. "Bind her," the boy said quietly. Before the woman could move, another voice rolled over the ridge, low and commanding. "Stand down." The two scouts dropped to one knee at once. He climbed the slope from the valley firelight as if the dark itself made way for him. Tall, broad across the shoulders, black hair tied at the nape, a long scar crossing one cheekbone like a pale slash of lightning. His coat was unfastened despite the cold, and the wind carried his scent. Storm rain and cedar, and something wild as night. Darius Frostborn. Ophelia knew him without ever having seen him. He stopped 3 paces away, eyes taking in everything. The cuffs, the bruises shadowing her jaw, the brand sigil livid beneath the torn neckline of her dress. His mouth flattened. "Who did this?" he asked, and the control in his tone was a thin wall over violence. Her vision tunneled. The hook in her chest yanked hard. She swayed. "I'm Ophelia," she whispered. "Frostborn, I—" The ground tilted. She fell forward. Darius caught her before she struck stone. The instant his hands closed around her, the world narrowed to heat and thunder. A silver thread snapped tight inside her chest so abruptly she gasped, like she'd surfaced from deep water. Relief slammed into terror, into aching rightness, into guilt so fierce it made her choke. Because this felt true, and Kane's brand still burned like a lie branded over truth. Darius went rigid. A sound tore from him, half growl, half shock, and from his back burst 2 vast black wings in a violent sweep that sent ash and sleet spiraling into the night. The scouts recoiled, swearing. His grip on Ophelia tightened, possessive, trembling with restraint. For one suspended heartbeat, they stared at each other while the brand on her skin blazed like a live coal. Then, from below, a runner shouted up the ridge, breathless and panicked. "My king, scouts from the Eastern Pass. Kane Duskwalker is marching on us with priests and oathbreakers." "My king, scouts from the Eastern Pass. Kane Duskwalker is marching on us with priests and oathbreakers." The words cracked the suspended moment in 2. Darius did not let go of her. His wings were still half spread, black as oil in the sleet, each feather edged in silver firelight from the valley below. Ophelia could feel the tremor running through him, where his forearm braced her back. Not weakness, restraint. A predator leashed by will alone. He looked past her shoulder at the runner. Numbers. 200, maybe more. Fast march. Banners hidden, but our scout saw Priest White in the center column. Darius's jaw flexed. How long? "If they don't stop by the marsh, they reach outer burn line by dawn." "Signal all patrols to fall back to second ring. No one engages alone. Get Commander Isra to the west wall and wake the forge crew. Move. The runner slammed a fist to his chest and bolted downslope. Only then did Darius look back at Ophelia. Up close, his eyes were not one color. Storm gray at first glance, yes. But now gold flickered through the irises like lightning trapped in river ice. He took one sharp breath, as if her scent hit him again, and hurt. The silver thread in her chest tightened. She had no name for what was happening inside her body. Heat spread from his hands, up her spine, into her throat. Her pulse kicked hard enough to make her vision blur. Under the panic, under the exhaustion, under the old training that told her every touch was danger, something fierce and wild uncurled and lifted its head. Her wolf. Not dead, as Cain had promised after months of suppression drafts and iron and blood magic. Not broken. Sleeping. Waiting. Now it stirred at Darius's scent and pressed against her ribs with a whine of recognition so intimate she almost sobbed. No. No. No, no, it couldn't be. Not now. Not with Cain's mark still carved into her skin like ownership papers. As if the thought summoned it, the brand under her collarbone flared white-hot. She jerked, a strangled cry escaping before she could swallow it. The pain was wrong, deeper than skin, a hook buried in marrow dragging one way, while that new silver pull dragged the other. Darius's fingers tightened instinctively, then loosened at once. Ophelia. He said her name like he was testing whether she would allow it. She stared up at him, breathing in ragged pulls. You feel it, she whispered. His throat worked. Another controlled inhale. Yes. A beat. Then quieter. I didn't ask for this to happen while you were hurt. The sentence hit her harder than the bond did. Not your mind now. Not good. Useful. Not triumph. An apology. She laughed once, a broken sound. I'm branded by another alpha. You should be disgusted. Something dangerous flashed across his face. Not at her. I'm disgusted, he said, voice dropping into a growl, at what was done to you. They held each other's gaze. Around them, scouts moved, boots grinding ash, orders passing in clipped tones. Wind hissed through burned trees. Somewhere below, a hammer began striking iron in alarm rhythm. The world kept moving toward war, but the ridge narrowed to the space between their mouths, their breath, their impossible recognition. She expected hunger in him, possession. She had seen it too often, that slick look men got when power handed them a reason to call violence sacred. What she saw in Darius was hunger, yes, but braided with grief and fury and a discipline so rigid it shook his shoulders. His wings folded in a controlled sweep, tucking close so the tips did not brush her without warning. Can you stand? He asked. She tried. Her legs buckled immediately. He caught her again, slower this time, telegraphing the movement. I can walk, she lied. You can survive, he corrected. Let me carry you to shelter. Not I'll take you. Let me. The old reflex rose anyway. She flinched from the choice because choices had always been traps with different names. Her gaze dropped to his hands, big and scarred, calloused across the knuckles. A king's hands, a killer's hands. Hands that had just held her as if she were breakable and dangerous both. Why? She asked hoarsely. You don't know if I'm lying. His mouth flattened. If you were Cain's spy, you'd have brought cleaner boots and a rehearsed story. A pause. And if you were lying, the bond wouldn't feel like this. Heat swept her again at the word bond. Her wolf pushed forward, aching toward him. She clamped down hard, terrified of the need riding under her skin. Darius glanced at the livid mark below her torn neckline. His expression became carved stone. That brand is trying to call you. I can smell the blood magic waking. His voice gentled, unexpectedly. You don't have to prove anything on this ridge. Not tonight. She hated how quickly tears burned her eyes. He seemed to notice and deliberately looked away for half a second, giving her privacy to breathe. Then he said, "Ophelia Frostborn, do I have your permission to move you?" No one had asked her permission for anything in 2 years. Her answer came out on a shudder. Yes. He gathered her into his arms as if she weighed nothing and started down the slope. Every jolt sent fire through her feet. Every step drew the scent of cedar and rain deeper into her lungs until her body stopped bracing for the strike that never came. She hated that she leaned into him. Hated it because it felt like relief. By the time they reached the inner palisade, torches had flared along the rebuilt walls and wolves paced the catwalks, hackles high. People turned as Darius entered with a bleeding stranger in his arms and black wings tight to his back like a war cloak. Murmurs rose. Duskwalker, branded, spy. Darius did not break stride. "Clear the north chamber," he told a healer at the stair. "Hot water, clean wraps, broth. No one enters without my word." The healer, a gray-braided woman with tattooed hands, blinked at Ophelia's brand and went pale. "My king, if that is Duskwalker binding, she should be restrained." Darius's gaze cut to her. "No chains." The two words landed like dropped iron. He carried Ophelia into a small stone room with one narrow bed, set her down carefully on the edge, and stepped back at once, giving distance even while every line of him screamed he wanted to stay within arm's reach. "I need to brief my commanders," he said. "Healer Anwin will tend the worst of your wounds. If anyone touches you without consent, you call for me." She stared, too tired to hide confusion. "Call for the Alpha King?" "For Darius," he said. Then he was gone, door shutting softly behind him. Anwin cleaned and bound what she could without commentary, her hands brisk but not unkind. Ophelia endured it with her teeth clenched and her gaze fixed on the single candle guttering on the sill. She drank broth because her body demanded it. She flinched every time footsteps passed in the hall. When Anwin left, she was alone with a stack of folded blankets, a wooden bowl of stew cooling on the chest, and the sound of distant preparations for siege, shouted counts of arrows, scrape of beams, wolves calling shifts. She told herself to sleep. Instead, she sat on the bed and shook. It began in her fingers, then took her shoulders, then her jaw. Not cold, though she was cold too. Aftershock, the body's delayed rebellion. Memories breaking loose now that she was behind a door without bolts on the outside. Cain's Chapel, chains in salt dark, laughter in the yard. She dug her nails into her palms until the tremors hurt. A knock sounded, quiet enough not to startle if one had lived gently. Ophelia went still. "Ophelia?" Darius's voice through wood. "May I enter?" She swallowed. "Yes." He came in carrying a basin of steaming water and a strip of clean linen over one shoulder. No guards. No ceremony. He had changed out of his wet coat. Now he wore a plain, dark shirt rolled to the forearms, and there was dried blood on one cuff that was not hers. He set the basin down by the bed and crouched. Not looming, not cornering, just lowering himself until his eyes were level with her knees. "Anwin said your feet were cut badly." His gaze flicked up to meet hers. "I can clean them again, only if you want." She blinked at him. "You have a war to plan." "It's planned for the next hour." A faint grimness touched his mouth. "This takes less time than a battle and matters more." Kings didn't kneel. Alphas certainly didn't kneel to half-dead women in stolen servant rags. Yet there he was, waiting for her answer, like it governed the room. Her throat tightened. "All right." He moved with a soldier's economy, but every action paused at the edge of contact. "I'm going to untie the wrap now. Is that all right?" A nod. "Water will sting." It did. She hissed. He slowed. "I need to lift your heel." She gave permission each time, increasingly in whispers. He accepted each as if it were an oath. Dark ash and blood clouded the basin. He cleaned grit from the deep split under her arch with hands steadier than any healer's. When she jerked at a sudden flash of pain, he did not pin her leg down. He simply said, "I've got you," and waited until she nodded again. No one had ever waited. When he finished the first foot, he wrapped it carefully and rested it on a folded cloth before reaching for the second. "Why?" she asked again, because the question would not leave. He kept his eyes on the bandage as he tied it. "Because someone taught you that care is a debt you owe back in flesh." His jaw tightened. "I'm not him." The answer was so direct it made something in her chest crack. She looked away, blinking hard. "You don't know what I am." He rose, carried the bloody water to the washstand, and returned with his heavy cloak, a dark wool lined in wolf fur, still warm from his shoulders. He draped it around her without fastening it, letting her decide. "I know what was done to you," he said. "What you are, you can tell me when you choose." He moved to the door. "Eat if you can, sleep if you can't eat. I'll post guards in the outer hall." Panic jumped before she could stop it. "No." He turned immediately, alert. "No guards?" "No. No men in the room." She hated how thin her voice sounded. "Please." His expression softened into something near pain. "No men in the room." He opened the door, then hesitated. "One more thing. During first watch, I shift. If nightmares come, call out. You'll hear me." She frowned, not understanding. He gave a short, almost embarrassed exhale. "I'm sleeping outside your door in wolf form. It keeps the hall quiet." Before she could answer, he stepped out and shut the door gently. Later, when she finally forced down 3 bites of stew and curled under his cloak, she heard it. The soft scrape of heavy body settling against stone, the huff of a massive wolf's breath. Steady and close. No chain rattle followed, no key turned, no footsteps entered without asking. She slept in jagged pieces, waking to the brands burn in old ghosts. But each time she surfaced, the dark was anchored by that breathing on the other side of the door. By dawn, terror had not left her. But it no longer owned every corner. The rebuilding council met in a long hall of salvaged beams and cracked slate, heatless except for 3 braziers smoking in the center. Frostborn survivors packed the benches. Scarred elders, thin mothers with infants bundled to their chests, fighters with fresh bandages and old grief in their eyes. Ophelia stopped at the threshold with Anwen at her elbow and felt every gaze cut toward the brand at her collarbone. Whispers moved like wind through dry grass. "She's Duskwalker marked. Look at the cuff scar. That's Kane's pet." At the far end, Darius stood by a stone table carved with a half-burned map of the valley. His black wings were hidden today beneath a long coat, but power rolled off him anyway, an alpha pressure that made younger wolves lower their heads without thinking. When he saw her hesitate, he came around the table and walked to meet her, as if crossing the distance in full view was the point. "Stay by me," he said quietly. Before she could answer, Elder Merrick, thin as a spear, white hair braided with bone beads, struck his staff on stone. "My king, this is madness. We convene war council while a branded Duskwalker female stands in our hall? Chain her until we verify her story." A growl of agreement from several benches. Ophelia's spine locked. She had expected this, expected worse. Still, shame crawled up her neck like fire. Another elder spat near her boots. "Maybe she led Kane here. Maybe she opened our gates once already," someone muttered. The words hit like a fist. Kane's forged testimonies were already circulating then. She could see it in their eyes. Not just fear of infiltration, but accusation, the convenient shape of a traitor fitted over a woman too damaged to defend herself. A hot-headed beta with a broken nose stepped forward from the left flank, hand on hilt. "Let me test her allegiance," he said. If she can't hold Wolf against command scent, she's compromised. Test. The polite word for domination. Ophelia's pulse spiked. Her wolf recoiled, then bared teeth. Darius moved before she did. His claws slammed into the stone table with a crack that split one corner clean through. The hall snapped silent. "She stands under my protection," he said, voice carrying like thunder in a canyon. "Challenge her. Challenge me." The beta sneered anyway, adrenaline overriding sense. "With respect, my king, a branded stray at your side makes us look weak." He lunged, not blade drawn, but hands out to seize her arm. Darius's wings exploded free in one violent sweep, black span filling the space between benches and table. Feathers struck sparks from the brazier rims. Ophelia vanished behind a wall of living shadow and heat. The beta hit that barrier and staggered back, swearing. Darius turned his head slightly, eyes gone molten gold. He did not shout. He used command voice, the old alpha tone that hit the spine like a hammer. "Kneel." The beta dropped to his knees so hard bone cracked on slate. Every wolf in the hall flinched with him, some bowing instinctively. Darius stepped forward once, wings still shielding Ophelia's body. "You will not touch her again without her permission. You will not name her stray. You will remember who rebuilt these walls while you were hiding in ravines, waiting for someone else to bleed first. Do you understand?" The beta, shaking, forced out, "Yes, my king." Louder. "Yes, my king." Darius held him there a heartbeat longer, then released the pressure. The man sagged, sweating. Merrick gripped his staff hard enough his knuckles blanched. "You would risk the pack for one female?" Darius folded his wings slowly, like sheathing blades. "I risk the pack if I teach them we become Duskwalker by chaining the wounded and calling it caution." He turned to Ophelia then, not performative now, just direct. "Sit with me." Not behind, not outside the circle, with him. He pulled the high-backed chair at his right away from the table and waited while she crossed the floor. The hall watched every step. Her legs trembled, but she made them carry her. When she sat, he did not trap her there with a hand at her shoulder. He simply took his own seat beside her and laid his palm flat on the cracked mapstone between them, close enough that she could reach if she chose. No one spoke for several breaths. Then, from the back, a woman with burn scars down one side of her face said grudgingly, "If she brought warning, let her speak. We need roots, numbers, priest names." Darius inclined his head to Ophelia. "Only what you want to give." Choice again, offered in public, where power usually performed itself through taking. Ophelia looked around the hall at hard faces, fear-bright eyes, children peering between elbows. She thought of Cain's threat to make a spectacle of her, of pups in dens, of Dawn. She drew one slow breath of cedar and storm from the man beside her, and felt, for the first time in years, that speaking might not kill her. "Cain's center column carries 3 blood priests," she said, voice rough but steadying as she went. "One limps on the left leg and wears wolf teeth sewn to his cuffs. He oversees brand rights. Cain will push for eclipse ground near the old moon altar east of the marsh. He needs line of sight and witnesses. If he can't take your gate quickly, he'll go for your dens." Silence, but a different silence now, listening, not judging. She pointed with bandaged fingers to a notch on the map where the marsh narrowed. "He'll send his Oathbreakers through here at second dark to set fire behind you. It's his favorite move. Make it look like panic from inside." Darius glanced at her, something like fierce approval passing over his face. "Mark that route," he ordered a scribe. "Double scouts at Marsh Notch. Move pups to Inner Stone." As the room erupted into purposeful motion, no one asked for chains. A cup of water appeared by her elbow. She looked up to find Darius had set it there without interrupting his commands. Her hand hovered, then closed around the cup. When she drank, She realized her shoulders had dropped a fraction. Her back was still to the wall in her mind. Her fear was still a live thing with claws, but beside her, the Alpha King who wore black wings like a curse made visible had not tried to own her once. By the time the council broke for battle assignments, Ophelia was still afraid of many things. Darius Frostborn was no longer one of them. By the time the council broke for battle assignments, Ophelia was still afraid of many things. Darius Frostborn was no longer one of them. He was giving rapid orders to commanders when a horn blared from the south gate. One long note, then a clipped double blast. Not attack. Parley signal. The hall stilled. Every head turned. Commander Isra strode in with sleet on her braids and a wrapped object in both hands, held away from her body like carrion. "Rider under white rag at the burn line," she said. "Wouldn't cross, wouldn't dismount." Said this was for Lady Ophelia Frostborn only. The hall went cold. Darius's voice sharpened. "Did you touch it bare-handed?" "No, tongs." "Good. Set it on the stone, everyone back." Isra obeyed. The bundle hit the table with a dry clack, bone on rock under cloth. Ophelia's stomach lurched before the wrapping even opened. She knew that sound. Cain liked bone. Bone lasted. Bone remembered. Darius nodded to Anwen. The healer stepped forward, muttered a warding phrase, and peeled back the cloth. Inside lay a small carved token made from polished rib, etched with Duskwalker knotwork, and a crescent moon split down the center. A lock of pale hair had been wound through the carving and sealed with dark wax. Ophelia stopped breathing. It was hers. Not recent, shorter, rough cut. From the night Cain had held her against the courtyard block and hacked off a fistful because she looked too proud. Elder Merrick made a sign against evil. Someone whispered, "Blood anchor." Darius didn't look away from the token. "Read it." Isra swallowed and turned the piece. Letters had been carved along the back in precise, elegant script. "She is branded mine by right and blood," Isra read, voice flattening with disgust. "Return her before dawn and kneel, and I may spare your whelps. Hide her, and I will string your pups from your gate with their mothers' tongues nailed beneath." A hiss went through the room like steam on iron. Isra kept reading. Slower now. "At eclipse, I claim the moon throne through her line. Resist, and Frostborn ends tonight." Then, in smaller cuts near the bottom, "Tell the Winged King to keep his mind open. I look forward to entering." Darius's claws bit stone. Ophelia's brand ignited. She folded in on herself with a strangled cry, palm slamming over the scar under her collarbone. Not heat this time, heat and voice, a slick pressure sliding through her veins. "Come back, little moon. Come home before I collect your pups in baskets." She tasted copper. The room tilted. For one split second she smelled not cedar and smoke, but Cain's chapel incense and the wet mineral stink of crypt walls. Then Darius was in front of her, crouched, one hand hovering inches from her shoulder. "Ophelia, eyes on me." She dragged her gaze to his. Gold stormed in them, fury held behind a dam. He did not touch until she gave the smallest nod. Then his palm settled between her shoulder blades, warm and steady. The pain receded to a throb. He turned his head without taking his hand away. "Burn that thing!" Anwen already had tongs on it. She lifted the token toward a brazier flame. The lock of hair burst first with a sour green flare. The carved bone shrieked as if air were being torn through a flute, then blackened, curled, and cracked in two. When the sound died, Darius stood. "Double guard on den caverns now. Move every pup to inner stone and post wolves at both tunnels." Merrick slammed his staff. "Or send the girl out and end this threat cleanly." The words had barely left his mouth before three voices snarled him down. Isra, Anwen, Darius. "No." Darius faced the hall. "Cain wants panic. He wants us cutting our own throat for him. He does not get it." Merrick's lip curled. You heard the message. He'll butcher children for sport. Then we defend children, Darius snapped. We do not hand him women and call it mercy. His gaze shifted to Ophelia, and his tone dropped a fraction. Can he track you right now? She forced air into her lungs. At moonrise, strongest. But he can tug when priests feed the brand. She swallowed. If he has my hair and blood records, he can cast farther. The room erupted again. Fear, cursing, muttered prayers. Darius raised a hand and the noise cut. Then we assume contact attempts all night. No one is alone. No one leaves wall line without partner. We hold until dawn and hit first at Eclipse ground. He stepped beside Ophelia's chair, close enough that his coat brushed her arm. And we prepare for the real play. Which is? Isra asked. Darius's mouth thinned. He doesn't just want her body in his court. He wants her line to unlock the old throne rights. He looked over the hall, voice like granite. A crowned tyrant with priest sanction and 300 oathbreakers won't stop at this valley. He'll burn every hold from here to the mines. Tonight, he threatens pups. Tomorrow, he threatens kingdoms. He met Ophelia's eyes. We finish this before he can wear a crown. The stronghold changed shape in the next hours. Less settlement, more fortress. Windows were shuttered with planks. Oil was hauled to wall tops. Spears lined every corridor. Mothers moved sleeping children into old storage caverns cut into bedrock, wrapped in blankets and fear. And everywhere Ophelia went, she felt eyes. Some were grateful now that her warning had proven true. Some were calculating. Too many were suspicious, sharpened by Merrick's whispers and the forged testimonies already arriving on Windriders. 3 arrived before dusk, each sealed with foreign crests. Darius broke them in front of his command circle. Ophelia watched his face harden as he read. He handed one to Isra. Read aloud. Isra did, jaw tight. Witness statement. Ophelia Frostborn admitted Duskwalker scouts through the East Ravine during the Frostborn slaughter. Received favor and elevation in exchange for compliance. A murmur of outrage, half at the accusation, half at her. Another letter claimed she had identified hidden Frostborn heirs for execution. A third swore she had presided over discipline rights in Kane's yard. Every line was a lie stitched from scraps of truth. Yes, she had stood in that yard, but in chains. Yes, she had seen names on lists, but because Kane had forced her to copy them under guard. Merrick seized on it at once. Convenient that all neighboring holds indict only one woman. Ophelia's nails dug crescents into her palm. Shame rose hot, irrational, old. This was how Kane had always done it. Hurt, then isolate, then point at the hurt as proof of guilt. Before she could speak, Darius crumpled one letter in his fist. I don't care if it came stamped by 10 lords and the moon herself, he said. I trust what I've seen. I trust the patterns of an abuser who weaponizes witnesses. His gaze cut across the semicircle. If any of you repeat those lies in my walls, you answer to me. Silence. Then Isra nodded once, hard. Still, when Ophelia left the command room, conversations dipped as she passed. By full dark, the pressure sat on her chest like a second brand. Every corridor smelled of adrenaline. Every distant shout made her flinch. The silver pull to Darius hummed under her skin, relentless and wrong-timed, seeking comfort while danger climbed the walls. She found him on the west rampart, cloak whipping in sleet, black wings half unfurled against the wind as he scanned the burn line through a brass scope. Torches stitched the valley below. Wolves moved like shadows along the ditches. He lowered the scope when he sensed her and angled his body so she could stand in the lee of his wing without asking. Any movement? She asked. Scattered fires at the marsh edge. Too many to be decoys. Too neat to be camp. He handed her the scope. Look! She peered. Tiny points of light in 3 crescents. Not a straight march. Staging positions. Pre-circles, she whispered. Mmm. A beat passed with only wind and the crack of distant timber. Her shoulder brushed his coat once. Her whole body lit at the contact, Wolf pressing forward. She stepped away too fast. Darius noticed. You can stay close because you want to, he said quietly. Not because the bond drags you. She laughed without humor. I can't tell the difference yet. His hand flexed on the parapet stone. Neither can I sometimes. She looked at him, startled by the admission. He kept his gaze on the valley. I've spent months treating instinct like an enemy, he said. After the massacre, the Abyss gifts came with appetites. Rage, possession. The wings answered blood before reason. His mouth tightened. I learned to hold them because if I didn't, my own wolves paid the price. She stared at the black span arcing behind him. Up close, the feathers were not pure black. Deep indigo gleamed at the edges like ravens under stormlight. You're afraid of hurting them, she said. I'm afraid of becoming useful to monsters. The words landed between them, heavy as oathstone. Ophelia swallowed. Cain won't stop at threats. During eclipse, he can use active brands as conduits. Saying it aloud made bile rise. If our bond is half-formed and the brand still lives, he can try to ride that path into you, into your alpha channel. Darius finally turned, face going still. Mind invasion. She nodded once. He did it once to a beta in his court, made him bite his own brother's throat while smiling. Wind snapped his cloak. For a heartbeat his eyes flashed pure gold, then steadied. Thank you for telling me, he said. No recoil, no blame. Everyone will tell you to lock me up now, she said. Everyone tells me many things. Despite herself, her mouth twitched. The brand pulsed, a warning throb. Far below, a child cried and was hushed. Above, clouds thinned enough to show the moon climbing. Darius held out his hand, palm up, not touching. May I? He asked. She looked from his hand to his face, then placed her fingers lightly in his. Heat shot up her arm, silver thread singing, Wolf leaning hard into the contact. He closed his grip gently. Whatever Cain built, he said, voice low. We break it our way. No cages, no ownership. You choose every step. Something in her, long frozen, cracked and warmed. Later, when the first watch changed, he found her in the old archive room because she could not make herself lie down. The room smelled of dust, wax, and damp paper rescued from burned shelves. She sat cross-legged on the floor with maps spread around her, sorting roots Cain favored and roots he'd fake. Darius came in quietly with 2 mugs of bitter willow tea. Couldn't sleep? He asked. She huffed. I forgot how. He sat opposite her on the rugs, close but not crowding, and passed a mug. His knee brushed hers once and stayed. For a while they worked in silence, placing pebbles on map points. His command mind was ruthless, efficient. Hers was ugly in a different way. She knew where Cain hid blades, because she had bled on most of them. At one point Darius reached for a marker and his sleeve slid back, revealing a jagged scar circling his wrist. She stared before she could stop herself. He noticed and turned his arm, offering a better look. Abyss chain, he said, from where I crawled out. Impulsively, she touched 2 fingers to the raised line. He went very still, not pulling away. It looks like mine, she murmured, glancing at her cuff scars. Then we hate the same iron, he said. Her eyes burned unexpectedly. I don't know how to be this. She gestured between them, frustrated. Wanted, not as leverage. You don't have to know tonight. His thumb traced once across the back of her hand, a question. She turned her palm up in answer. He threaded their fingers slowly, like building trust one joint at a time. We can be two people in a war room who refuse to let a bastard decide what our bond means. Tears slipped before she could hide them. She laughed weakly, embarrassed. Darius shifted closer and lifted his free hand, stopping a breath from her cheek. "Can I?" he asked. She nodded. He brushed the tear away with his knuckle as if it were fragile glass. No one had touched her face gently in years. She leaned into the warmth before fear could call it weakness. His forehead came to rest lightly against hers. Their breaths mingled. Cedar, tea, ash. The silver thread between their chests hummed like drawn wire. "Ophelia," he whispered, "I would rather lose a throne than use you." A small, wrecked sound escaped her. She tightened her grip on his hand. For a few stolen minutes the war fell away. Just two people on a rug amid maps and candlelight, learning the shape of trust without teeth. Then the alarm bell screamed. Once, twice, then continuously. They were on their feet instantly. Darius's wings burst out as they ran, filling the narrow corridor with black motion. A guard slammed into view, panting blood into his beard. "South tunnel," he gasped. "Fire in the lower den, smoke wards failed." Another wolf behind him shouted, "Pup chamber breach!" Ophelia's heart stopped, then slammed. They hit the den stairs at full sprint. Smoke rolled upward in choking waves. Below, chaos. Mothers screaming names, fighters hauling water skins, children coughing in blankets as healers dragged them toward clean air. And in the middle of it all, carved into the stone floor of the tunnel mouth in fresh, wet blood, was Cain's sigil, a moon split in two. Ophelia staggered as her brand detonated with pain so bright she went to one knee. The world narrowed to a single voice sliding through bone. "You see? I can reach through walls, through your little king, through anything you touch." Across the chamber Darius reeled too, one hand flying to his temple. His wings convulsed, feathers shuddering. He snarled, then froze, jaw clenching as if fighting an invisible hand on his spine. His eyes flickered from gold to flat black for one horrifying second. "Darius!" Ezra shouted, grabbing for him. He whipped around with a roar that shook dust from the ceiling, claws out, and barely stopped inches from her throat. Not Darius. Something riding his reflexes, testing muscles, tasting leverage. Ophelia forced herself up through agony. "Don't touch him!" she screamed. "Back away!" Two wolves were missing from the pup count, someone yelled. Smoke thickened. Children cried. Darius trembled in place, half-turned predator, half-man drowning behind his own eyes. In Ophelia's skull, Cain laughed. "Come to the ruin circle at eclipse," the voice purred. "Alone, little moon. Or I finish learning your king from the inside and make him tear this den apart himself." Darius slammed both hands against the wall and howled like it was ripping him open. The situation had gone past siege. It was personal now, magical now, and seconds from catastrophe. Darius slammed both hands against the wall and howled like it was ripping him open. The sound tore through smoke and stone, through every screaming mother and coughing child in the den chamber. Wolves recoiled. One pup wailed louder. Isra dragged two little ones behind an overturned grain chest while Anwin shouted for wet cloths and clear air. Ophelia lurched toward Darius on shaking legs. "Darius, look at me." His head snapped toward her too fast, eyes wrong. One iris molten gold, the other a swallowed black that reflected nothing. His wings spasmed, pinning and unpinning like broken shutters in a storm. He bared his teeth at her, then choked on the growl as if another will had hooked fingers into his throat. In her skull, Cain's voice purred, delighted. "There you are. See how quickly he opens when you panic? Branded things make such useful keys." The blood sigil on the floor glistened, fresh and obscene, its carved crescent split in two. Ophelia dropped to her knees beside it and pressed her hand close without touching. Warm. Recently made. Not just threat. Anchor. Cain had sent someone inside the tunnels long enough to paint a live conduit and ignite her brand through stone. Water, Anwen barked. Sand, smother that glyph. No, Ophelia shouted, voice cracking hard enough to snap heads around. Don't break the lines. You'll backlash into everyone linked by blood in this chamber. Everyone linked? Merrick's face blanched. The pups. Darius made a strangled sound and seized his own throat as if trying to rip out a chain. One wing smashed into the tunnel arch, showering sparks. Two fighters dragged a falling beam aside before it crushed a cowering pair of children. Ophelia crawled to him and caught his wrist with both hands. His claws pricked her skin instantly. He froze on the edge of shredding her. Darius. She forced his name through grinding teeth as the brand flared white. He wants you to strike. Don't give him your hands. For one breath, his gaze cleared. Gold flooded back. Go, he rasped, voice layered with something not his. Away from me. Cain laughed inside her bones. Come to the ruin circle at Eclipse. Alone. Or I finish learning him. Next time, I won't stop at his hands. I'll take his command voice and make him order your pups into the fire himself. Darius convulsed, dropping hard to one knee. Blood ran from his nose. His wings dragged in ash. Ophelia understood then with the flat, terrible calm of truth. This would not be fought at the wall. Cain had already breached the most guarded space in the stronghold without crossing it. As long as her brand lived, and that half-made silver bond to Darius remained open, Cain had a road into him, a road through her. She stood swaying and turned to the room. Isra, seal the chamber and move the children to upper caverns. No one touches that sigil until I come back. You're not going anywhere, Darius snarled, still half-bent, still fighting himself. She went to him anyway and cupped his face between her palms. His skin burned. Yes, I am. His eyes locked on hers. Raw panic. Raw rage. Ophelia. Listen to me. Her voice dropped to the tone she had used once to soothe frightened stable foals as a girl. If you chain me, he drags me through the brand. If you hide me, he reaches you through the bond. This isn't about walls anymore. You are not bait. I'm the blade. Behind them, Merrick spoke from the smoke, hoarse and bitter and afraid. If she leaves, she hands herself to him. Ophelia looked over her shoulder at the elder. If I stay, I hand him your king. That shut him. Darius caught her wrist, shaking. Don't ask this. I'm not asking. Their stares held, fierce and wounded and bright with the impossible pull between them. Then she bent and pressed her forehead to his. I need the Frostborn sigil stone, she whispered. Now. They cleared the old shrine chamber under the keep in less than 10 minutes. It had once been a wine cellar. Now moon-carved stones ringed a cracked dais, and in the center stood the Frostborn sigil slab salvaged from the ruins of the dead capital. A waist-high pillar of pale granite veined with silver, wolf and crescent crest worn but unbroken. Candles guttered in every niche. Above, through a shattered vent shaft, Eclipse shadow had begun to bite into the moon. Isra barred the door from outside with 6 guards. Inside stood only Ophelia, Darius, Anwen, and Merrick, because for all his suspicion, the old elder remembered rights older than fear. You can't do this alone, Darius said for the 4th time, pacing like a caged storm. There has to be another cut point, Anwen, tell her. Anwen's tattooed hands were steady as she laid out a ritual blade, salt, and a crystal vial the size of Ophelia's thumb. There may be, she said quietly. Not before Eclipse. Merrick leaned on his staff, eyes hollowed by smoke and shame. Royal severance is death work. She burns out one bond to kill another. She could lose her wolf, her mind, her heart. I know, Ophelia said. Darius turned on her, wings flaring once in helpless fury. Then no. She stepped into his space and waited until he stopped moving. You told me no cages, she said. No ownership. Choose every step. His jaw worked. She watched him hear his own words and hate them. I meant to keep you alive. I am trying. The brand burned in pulse with the eclipsing moon, each throb an iron hook. The silver thread to Darius answered in painful sympathy, bright and unfinished. Cain had built his trap between those 2 points. She would rip both out if she had to. Ophelia picked up the ritual blade. For a heartbeat, all she saw was chapel stone and Cain smiling over her bound body. Her hand trembled. Then Darius stepped in close, not touching, and bared his throat. A wolf's surrender, an alpha's trust. Whatever you choose, he said, voice rough, you don't stand alone in it. She inhaled cedar and storm, steadied and sliced her palm. Blood welled hot and dark. She pressed it to the sigil stone. Silver lines woke beneath her hand like moonlit rivers. State your name, Merrick whispered. Formal now. Keeper of old law. Ophelia lifted her chin, blood running over her wrist. I am Ophelia Alowan Frostborn, she said, each word ringing clearer than the last. Daughter of House Frostborn, heir by blood to the moon throne, witness me. The stone blazed. Moonfire shot up her arm, a white agony so pure she screamed. Not flame, not light, both. It plunged through marrow, found Cain's brand under her collarbone, and tore into it like a beast. The sigil on her skin rose in black relief, smoking. Cain's voice slammed into her skull, no longer smooth. What are you doing? She gasped through clenched teeth. Ending you. The silver thread to Darius yanked tight, then began to unravel as the right caught it. She felt it shred through her chest, felt her wolf howl in terror at the severance. Her knees hit stone. Blood sprayed the sigil slab. Darius lunged, but Anwin seized his arm. If you interrupt now, she dies. Ophelia forced her palm harder to stone and reached with her free hand to the burning mark at her collarbone, skin split under her nails. She dragged out a clot of blackened blood magic that writhed like molten wire and dropped it into the waiting crystal vial. It hissed, hit glass, and crystallized into a jagged ember. The brand on her skin went dark. At the same instant, the half-formed bond to Darius snapped. Pain detonated in both of them. Darius roared, dropping to one hand. Ophelia folded over, retching, vision gone white, then black, then white again. Her wolf vanished from her senses like a door slamming in winter. Silence crashed down. When she could breathe, she found herself on the floor, cheek against cold stone, Darius's hand inches from hers but not touching. The burned sigil at her collarbone smoked faintly. Dead. Anwin crouched, checking pupils, pulse. She's alive. Barely, Ophelia thought. Hollowed out and shaking like cracked glass. But alive. She clawed toward the crystal vial and closed numb fingers around it. Inside, the severed brand fragment pulsed with ugly dark light. Darius caught her elbow as she tried to stand. You're done. She met his eyes. No silver thread now, no supernatural tug. Only him, and the raw choice of reaching anyway. No, she whispered. Now I go kill him. Eclipse swallowed the valley in iron twilight. The ruined circle east of the marsh rose from fog. Broken standing stones around a sunken altar, ancient moon runes worn shallow by war and weather. Cain's warband ringed it in black and silver, torches held low. Priests in white stood at cardinal points with bowls of blood. 2 bound pups, frostborn, maybe 7 and 8, knelt by the altar, gagged and wide-eyed. Ophelia walked into the circle alone in a torn cloak, moonsteel blade at her hip, crystal vial hidden in her fist. Every head turned. Cain stepped forward smiling, dark hair slicked back, coat immaculate despite mud and war. He looked exactly as he had in her nightmares, beautiful in the way Venom was beautiful. My moon, he said warmly. You came home? She stopped 10 paces away. Let the pups go. He laughed softly. Still bargaining like you hold terms. His gaze dropped to her collarbone and widened with delighted cruelty when he saw the scorched scar where his brand had been. Then to the torn, silverless skin over her heart where the broken bond had marked her. Oh, you did it. You broke your new mate to save him. I broke your leash. Did you? Cain tilted his head. Or did you just make yourself empty? He gestured. A priest yanked one pup upright by the hair. The child whimpered around the gag. Royal blood or not, Cain said conversationally, you were always easiest to move with someone else's throat in my hand. Ophelia's fingers tightened on the vial until glass bit skin. You'll die before moonset. He smiled wider. Everyone says that once. The eclipse darkened further. Priests began chanting. Cain spread his arms to the ring of witnesses. Behold Ophelia Frostborn, rightful mate to Cain Duskwalker, who returns by blood and fear to crown. She moved. The crystal vial smashed against his chest, right over the scarred brand sigil near his heart. Black light exploded across his coat. Ophelia stepped into it and spoke in royal voice. The old command rolling from somewhere older than terror. What you marked as mine returns to its master. The severed brand magic boomeranged. It hit Cain like a hammer. He screamed, first in shock, then true pain, as dark veins raced from his heart up his throat and across his jaw. Priests stumbled, chanting broken. Torches blew out one by one in a sudden downdraft. Thunder cracked overhead. Darius dropped from Stormcloud with black wings spread vast as midnight, talons first. He hit Cain full force, driving him onto the altar stone hard enough to split it. Claws pinned Cain's wrists. One wing shielded Ophelia from crossbow fire as Ezra's archers erupted from the fog line and slaughtered the outer ring. Chaos detonated. Wolves crashed the circle from all sides. Anwen, absurdly calm with a healer's knife, cut the pups free and shoved them toward safety. Cain writhed under Darius, spitting blood and spells. Get out of my head, he shrieked, as if the returning brand were a fire burrowing inward. I made you. Both of you. Darius's voice dropped to killing cold. You made nothing. Ophelia drew the moonsteel blade. Cain saw it and bared crimson teeth at her. You were made to kneel to me. She stepped to the altar, hands steady now that they had purpose. I was born to end men like you. She drove the blade straight through the brand on his heart. Moonsteel met cursed sigil with a scream of metal and magic. Cain arched, eyes going wide, then black. Darius leaned in, claws locking harder, and twisted the hilt with her. The sigil shattered. Cain's body flashed white from within, cracked like fired clay, and collapsed into ash that stank of salt crypts and old blood. Wind took the top layer instantly, scattering it over broken stone. No body, no resurrection flesh. Darius was already moving, barking orders over battle noise. Gather every grain, running water, now. Isra and 3 wolves scraped ash into bronze basins. They ran for the marsh outflow, where current ran swift beneath ice. Ophelia followed on shaking legs and watched the last of Cain Duskwalker swirl into black water and vanish downstream. Only when the final basin was emptied did she breathe. Behind her, fighting faded. Oathbreakers fled or surrendered. Priests dropped their knives and knelt in mud. The eclipse began to pass, and Ophelia, emptied by severance and battle, swayed where she stood and nearly fell. Darius caught her. His arms around her felt both familiar and heartbreakingly new without the bond thread. No instinctive silver hum, no magical certainty. Just heat, blood, breath, and the choice to hold. Ophelia shook so hard her teeth clicked. Easy, Darius murmured into her hair, voice wrecked. I have you. She pulled back enough to see him. blood streaked his cheek. One wing was torn near the edge, feathers matted. His eyes searched hers with naked fear. "I can't feel my wolf," she whispered. The confession came raw. "When I severed it, everything went quiet." He pressed his forehead to hers. "Then we listen together until she comes back." She swallowed against a sob and gripped his coat with both fists. Around them, wolves secured prisoners, children were reunited with sobbing parents, and dawn teased pale behind retreating eclipse shadow. Ophelia drew a breath that hurt and chose. "If we do this again," she said, voice ragged but clear, "we do it equal." Darius went still. Then, slowly, deliberately, he dropped to one knee in marsh mud and bared his throat to her in full view of pack and prisoner alike. "Equal," he said. "Chosen." She touched the pulse at his neck with trembling fingers. "Do you consent?" His answer was a growled whisper. "Yes, Ophelia. Bite me, mark me, or walk away. I am yours by choice only." Something fierce lit in her chest. Small, ember bright. Maybe wolf, maybe woman, maybe both. "Stand," she breathed. He rose. She tipped her head, baring the shoulder-throat junction where neck met collar. "Then ask me." His hands came to her waist, firm and reverent. "May I mark you, mate?" Heat flooded her despite exhaustion. "Yes." He bent and set his mouth to her skin first, a warm open press that made her shudder. Then his teeth sank in. Pain lanced hot and sharp. Clean, claimed. Nothing like Cain's brand fire. She cried out and grabbed his shoulders as the bite deepened, puncturing skin, drawing blood. On the next heartbeat, the pain transformed, unfurling into a rush of molten relief that poured down her spine and into her hips, her hands, her teeth. Her wolf slammed back into awareness with a joyous howl that almost dropped her to her knees. Darius growled low against her throat, drinking just enough to seal. Magic answered blood. Silver light sparked where his mouth marked her, and spread in branching lines under her skin, like lightning finding home. He lifted his head, blood on his lips, eyes blazing gold. "Mine," he whispered, hoarse with wonder rather than ownership. Ophelia laughed through tears. "Yours?" She pushed at his chest until he understood and opened his coat. Beneath torn shirt, over the muscle above his heart, skin weighted, scarred, living, offered. "Your turn," he said, voice shaking now. She flattened her palm over his heartbeat, felt it thunder, and looked up once for final consent. He nodded. "Please." Ophelia bared her teeth and bit down above his heart. His body jolted with a rough sound, half pain, half pleasure, as her teeth pierced. His blood hit her tongue, storm salt and cedar and iron. She held long enough to mark deep, to answer claim with claim, then licked once instinctively to seal. Black wings exploded around them, cocooning them from the world in a living tent of feathers and shadow. Inside that dark, the bond caught, not as a chain, as a joining. Silver light leapt from her chest to his and back again in a thundercrack that made everyone outside gasp and drop their eyes. The thread that formed now was whole and warm and wide enough for breath on both sides. She felt his grief, old and scarred, and his fierce protectiveness. He felt her terror, her stubbornness, her hard-won rage and tenderness. No compulsion, no hook, a door standing open both ways. "Yours?" Darius whispered again, forehead to hers. "Mine," she answered, smiling through tears. "Mate," they said together. The wings slowly folded, revealing them to morning light, blood-marked, mud-splashed, shaking and alive. Darius cupped her face in both hands as if relearning it and kissed her. Careful at first, then hungry with relief, then soft again when she trembled. When they finally broke apart, she leaned into him and felt it, the settled hum of a true bond, steady as a heartbeat, no poison in it. He wrapped his torn wing around both of them and held on while dawn climbed the marsh, and Cain's ashes vanished downriver forever. 3 days later, the great hall of the rebuilt stronghold stood packed wall to wall. No smoke this time, no panic horns. Banners in frostborn silver and blue hung clean over stone newly scrubbed of soot. Wolves and humans stood shoulder to shoulder. Fighters, elders, healers, runaways from 3 neighboring holds who had slipped in after hearing Duskwalker fell. At the center dais, the old moon throne, its charred arms repaired with black iron, waited beneath a shaft of morning light. Merrick, in ceremonial bone beads, struck his staff once. Bring forth the heir. Ophelia walked the aisle in a dark blue coat, scars visible, head high. Darius walked beside but half a pace behind until they reached the dais, where he stopped and remained standing rather than taking the throne first. Murmurs rippled at that. Anwen stepped forward carrying a silver circlet set with moonstone. Isra carried a warblade sheathed in black leather. Merrick's voice carried, Ophelia Alawen Frostborn, blood heir, breaker of tyrants, do you claim the moon throne by right and by duty? Ophelia looked out over faces that had once doubted, feared, and now watched with fierce hope. I claim it, she said, to end the law of chains. Anwen placed the circlet on her brow. Merrick turned to Darius. Darius Frostborn, Alpha King, will you kneel as king consort and war leader to co-rule under shared law? Darius dropped to one knee without hesitation, black wings sweeping the stone. Gladly. The hall roared. Ophelia offered him her hand. He rose, kissed her marked shoulder where it showed above her collar, then faced the hall with her. She drew a parchment from Isra and broke the wax seal. First decree, she said. All servant contracts in Frostborn lands are hereby void unless resworn as protected citizen oaths witnessed by council and healer. No body can be owned. No labor can be enforced by bloodbrand, chain, or mate claim. Violation is treason. Silence, then thunderous pounding of fists and paws on stone. She lifted a second document. Second decree. The North Stronghold opens as sanctuary for runaways and captives from any pack. Anwen of House Reed, survivor and healer, is appointed first advocate for the displaced with full council vote. Anwen blinked hard, then bowed, eyes wet. Third decree. Commander Isra is named Warden of Roads and Dens, charged with safe passage routes and pup protections across all allied territories. Isra grinned wolf-sharp and thumped her chest. Ophelia looked last to Merrick, who stood rigid, shame and pride wrestling across his old face. He met her gaze and bowed deeper than rank required. I spoke fear as wisdom, he said publicly. I was wrong. She inclined her head. Then help me build better law from it. He nodded once, fierce with relief. By afternoon, the first sanctuary petitioners crossed the gate. A stable girl with a broken wrist, 2 brothers from mine camps, a gray-haired man wearing a snapped collar around his neck, like a relic he had not yet dared remove. Ophelia met each at the threshold personally, touched wrist to wrist, and said, You are under Frostborn protection. Darius stood at her shoulder, wings open like a banner, not a threat. At sunset, when the hall finally emptied and the last decree was pinned to the public board, Ophelia stepped onto the west rampart where sleet had once cut her face raw. The valley below glowed with hearth fires and new roofs. Children's laughter carried from the den yard. Darius came up behind her and slid his arms around her waist, careful of the fresh mark at her neck. Your Majesty, he murmured against her ear, teasing. She snorted. Your Majesty. He turned her in his arms. Their bond hummed, warm and settled, silver and alive. Hard day, he said. Good day. He kissed her once, slow. What now, mate? Ophelia looked out over the rebuilt valley. the sanctuary gates, the people who had survived. Now, she said, we keep the doors open. We teach them no one disappears in chains again. Darius smiled, a rare, fierce, joyful thing, and touched his forehead to hers. Chosen, he whispered. Not owned, she whispered back. Below them, Frostborn rose from ash into night, and this time it rose with both crowns, both claws, and both hearts beating in the same direction.